Have no fear, fellow citizens. The mediator is here.
Welcome back. Welcome back. Now let's get to the top 8 headlines and developing news stories that made it into the news this week. Heading into next week, after the weekend, you may want to keep an eye on these stories. These are the stories that people are talking about and that are very, very important, that are developing and going into the upcoming weeks could develop into bigger stories. Story number 1, Suicide Watch. New study shows that black youth have some of the highest suicide rates among any ethnic group. So keep an eye on this story. There's a lot going on inside of the Suicide Watch story. Story number 1. That's why I made it to the top 8. There's been a lot of veterans that have been committing suicide, and people just can't seem to figure out why. People are having self-esteem issues. They're not talking about it. And that's why story number 1 made it inside the top 8 this week. Another thing, a mother was arrested after being accused of she was not feeding her 26-pound, 16-year-old. She was not feeding him. So keep an eye on stories like that as well. Not only are people having a problem with suicide, but parents are not taking the proper care of their kids like they should be. So keep an eye on this story. A lot of people who feel they're deprived in any civilization. Sometimes they take drastic measures and they don't want to seek help. There's a lot going on inside of story number 1 that you may want to keep an eye on. Study shows that most Americans are lonely and overworked. A report by NPR claims that the workroom culture could be the blame. So that's why this story is very unique. It talks about people's inner spirit, the spirituality, and why people should seek some type of spiritual treatment, and they should visit a psychologist regularly. And even if you're in a leadership position, you should have somebody to vent to, somebody to talk to. And this is why story number 1 made it in this week. Like I said, there's another story that made it in. Veterans' suicide rates. I talked about this. Still remains reasonably high, even after years of reform. So that's why story number 1 is unique. It really, really centers in on the reality that we all face mental health issues, and sometimes we all need to seek treatment. And that's why story number 1 made it in this week. Story number 2. Are corporations and politicians really that bad? Keep an eye on this story. It homes in on the reality that we face on the ground when it comes to politicians and big corporations that come into communities, and they do positive things, but sometimes they get caught doing some shady things as well. Keep an eye on these headlines. New evidence shows that a lot of Republican lawmakers enrich themselves off of Trump's tax cuts. Keep an eye on that story. Talks about the details in the fine print of who actually benefited from the tax cuts. Now, this could get political, and it could hit the eyes of the public to have a different view on how they view not only this administration's decisions, but past administrations as well. When it comes to money, people get very, very serious. Business Insider says that only 1/4 of Americans trust the U.S. to hold a fair impeachment trial. Keep an eye on this story. It gets into the fine details about the different views that people have on this administration. Strong economy is helping Trump's approval ratings. This is a report that I caught at the tail end of. But they're saying that people are divided on this impeachment thing and his removal from office. Some people say he should stay in office. Some people view that he should get out of office. These are just some views that are in the side of story number 2 and why this story made it to the top 8. Report from CNN says that Democrats accuse Trump of improperly hiding classified testimony from Pence aide. So keep an eye on this too. Now, when we talk about Pence aide, we're talking about aid to places like Ukraine and aid to other countries as well. And they're saying that there may be some more details inside the story. Story number 2 has all the fine prints that people need to get a good story to understand what's happening inside of this administration and past administrations as well. And when you have people hiding things, that's why story number 2. We've seen stories like this come and go. We saw it in the Wall Street scandals years ago with the mortgage crisis and the failing of the banks. Now we're seeing it inside of the Capitol, of Congress in Washington. We're seeing it, and that's why story number 2 made it to the top 8. Story number 3. Should we be on watch for an outbreak? Now, keep an eye on this story. It keeps popping up and it keeps making headlines about viruses popping up not only in the news but in people's neighborhoods and in people's real day-to-day lives. These are real-time stories, so keep an eye on it. They're having a problem with the coronavirus that just popped up in China and now is being spotted in some places inside the United States. So keep an eye on this story. Story number 3 has a lot to do with what is happening in the medical field, that you may want to keep an eye on the health of not only your children but yourselves. Messages on social media asking for the public to help them due to an outbreak. There are reports that these messages were coming from Chinese inside of China. This is a big story. CDC reports coronavirus inside of Illinois and possibly California. Keep an eye on this story as it develops. Scientists reportedly found 28 new virus groups inside of a melting glacier. So you're starting to get the fine details of why story number 3 is interesting and why it could grow into a bigger story. Staying informed is the best thing to do when it comes to story number 3. Another story, China's coronavirus leaves many places on lockdown and has spread it across the Hubei province. So keep an eye on this story. It's spreading into bigger places, and it's really getting a lot of attention. Story number 3, definitely keep an eye on. Story number 4, should the U.S. pull out of the Middle East? Now think about this story because it's creating a lot of buzz around certain discussion tables, even in places in Washington where people are trying to figure out what is the strategy when dealing with the Middle East. There's been some headlines that have surfaced that you may want to keep an eye on. Huge rally of Iraqi protesters want the United States out of Iraq. Another story, Iranian missile attacks leave 34 U.S. soldiers with concussions according to the Pentagon. Jihadists kill dozens of soldiers in Syria. Trump is in talks with Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu about Middle East peace plan. Keep an eye on story number 4. Trump has also met with Iraqi president for the first time since the death of Solomon Ali, the general from Iran. These are all of the reasons why people are saying the Middle East is costing too much money, and that we really need to try to find a resolution to all this chaos that have been going on in the Middle East. To protect American troops, U.S. to deploy an anti-missile system in Iraq and in the Middle East. Iranian lawmaker reportedly put a $3 million hit on the President of the United States, President Trump. Former German military translator charged with spying for Iran, according to Fox News report. Keep an eye on story number 4. It definitely has the potential to grow. It definitely will leave you questioning, should the United States pull out of the Middle East? Keep an eye on story number 4. Story number 5. Where is all of the money? This is a headline that you may want to keep an eye on when you're talking about the finances of Americans businesses, and the American people. There are some headlines that topped in that you may want to keep an eye on during the week. Walmart-owned Hayneedle say they will lay off 200 from an Omaha headquarters. That's a big story. These are jobs that are being lost. You may want to keep an eye on what's happening inside of your community with the big corporations, community. You may have a job. This is why story number 5 is in depth. Texas Governor Greg Abbott says Americans are fleeing high-tax states. In his words, they're saying that these high-tax states are hamstringing capitalism. So you're seeing the fine details of people's opinions about taxes and why people are migrating from certain states to another. They're looking at the mighty dollar, and they're looking for the benefits. If a state has a high poverty rate, there's a high chance that a business will not go into it because the citizens are not highly educated. This is why story number 5 is an amazing story. Report says that over $11 billion, an $11 billion wall would be the world's most expensive project. This is talking about military funds that the president has been taking out of to try to build and finance a border wall. Keep an eye on story number 5. We're talking about money. the American dollar, where you're spending your money inside of your community, inside of wealthier communities. People are starting to understand that there's mismanagement that has been going on with the American dollar, and it's starting to affect the American dream. That's why story number 5 is unique. Report says that the world's richest 1% have more than twice as much wealth as the 6.9 billion people on Earth. This is a big story talking about money. You'll see a story like this get bigger. They're even talking about student finances, college debt. Story number 5, definitely a big story. Story number 6, is the gun control debate and discrimination still an issue? Keep an eye on this story. It homes in on what is happening on the ground inside of almost every community. Here's some headlines to keep an eye on. Seattle shooting leaves a person dead and a few people injured. A teen from Alabama is being accused of killing his mother and 2 brothers before going to school. Another teen at a basketball game. This deals with discrimination. He was playing and reportedly walked into the locker room and spotted a drawing of a stick figure around with a noose around his neck with his name on it. Keep an eye on stories like this. They're just a disaster, a recipe for a disaster. These stories surface all the time, and this is why story number 6 is a big story. Arizona mother admits to killing her 3 children in a police report by USA Today. Wendy's on the radar after a Pennsylvania manager arrested after allegedly shooting a teen in the shoulder. A man has been arrested in San Antonio bar shooting incident. 2 people reported dead and 5 wounded in claims of self-defense. New Jersey cop fatally shot himself in a first response. This shines a lot of light on the gun debate and guns, period. This story is definitely growing. Suspect fatally shoots a 10-year-old boy, reported by Memphis police. 15 wounded. 2 dead outside a Kansas City bar after a Chiefs football game. Story number 6 has all the fine details, and this is why it's in the top 2. It's almost in the top 2 stories that made it in this week. We'll be right back. We're going to take a quick break.
I mean, think about the jobs, the economic development, the reconstruction, what it would do for this community. Our re-election. Think about yourself for once, Smitty. Think about your own job.
That dance hall's been in our community for that long. You believe that, sir?
Hey, what are you yelling for?
Oh my god, she's talking to the dancing. I was wondering if I could get that porch.
If you see Uncle Smitty, tell him he's on my hit list.
Excuse me?
You heard me. Tell Uncle Smitty and Sylvester if they close down the dance hall, they're gonna get it.
What'd you do? Go over there and finish the job?
We're gonna have to go to Plan B.
What's Plan B?
I just wanted to let you know that we found the location for the shopping center. First thing I need to know is what you need out of the deal.
I'm looking for time. When can you have it ready? My business is my pleasure.
Please, you don't understand. So many performers have set foot in that hall. If you tear it down, that is the last historical link that this town has left. Please, if you could just reconsider.
Go home.
You don't just throw people out and give land to some big shot. That's not politics. That's weak. And a sign of desperation.
My parents were great contributors to this city, and a super center was their dying wish.
We don't need dance in this community. We need jobs, a better economy. That's what I was hired for. We need that shopping center.
With the approval of the mayor and the city council, I am very pleased to announce that we will be moving forward and using this land to build our very first locally owned shopping center.
Why? All I want to know is why.
Welcome back. Now it's time to get to the top 2 stories that made it inside of the media this week. Story number 7. Are you being made fun of for going to college? Now, keep an eye on this story and this headline. It has been a big, big story that is still in the developing stages and may develop into a bigger topic, bigger discussion as the weeks go on. Elizabeth Warren, there was some footage about her being approached after I think it was a campaign debate or a rally or something, and one of her, a father of a young girl, or I know he has children, he approached her and wants to know about his child's student loan debt and would he be reimbursed if he paid off her student loan debt. And most of the candidates have been talking about forgiveness programs from the government for people who battle with student loan debt. This is a big discussion, and it really is shining a lot of light on that. There's a lot of Americans right now, even younger Americans, who have went to college and who cannot afford to pay their college bills. So the government and the government officials have been talking about forgiveness programs. Keep an eye on this story number 7. It could develop into a much bigger story because it homes in on the reality on the ground when it comes to debt and student loan debt. That's why story number 7 made it in, and that's why it's in the top 2 this week. Story number 8, and the top story that made it to the media this week. Big story that you may want to keep an eye on. Here's the headline: pollution and homelessness equals big problems. This is a big story. Do you know that it has been proven that pollution is the cause of a lot of deadly viruses? This is what makes story number 8 unique, and here are some headlines that you may want to keep an eye on during the week and into next week. Proven deadly vaping oils have been flooding across the Arizona border. These are vaping oil products. Keep an eye on that. Toxic forever chemicals have been reportedly found in the drinking water across the United States. Big story, and this is why there's been a lot of attention on the treatment of the United States water system and the rivers and all the stuff that goes on with making drinkable water. Trump administration to roll back water regulations. Malaysia tells rich countries that they will no longer take their trash. They reportedly will be sending back their plastic waste also. Keep an eye on story number 8. China to ban single-use plastic bags and other plastic items as well. They're not the only country that's taking action. There's a lot of places as well that have been really trying to center in on this plastic pollution that the world has been facing. They've been finding it in the ocean, and environmentalists are getting fed up. People who really care about the environment and just care about the earth are starting to have a voice in this fight. Those are our top 8 headlines and developing news stories that made it this week. I want to thank you so much for tuning in. As usual, I'd like to thank all the news outlets and the journalists that keep us informed. You deserve all the credit. I'm just a mediator. Please don't forget to go to our website and show some support by either buying something, clicking something, watching something, reading something, or to sponsor a program. I want to thank you so much for tuning into the media this week. I am out of here. Have a good week, everybody. Thank you for tuning into the media with me, Brian West. Have a good weekend. Have a good week.
Have no fear, fellow citizens. The mediator is here.
If you want to check out the stories that almost made it in or did make it in, go to our Twitter feed on our website. Check out everything. All of the sources are there. Go to the website. It's method8inc.com, method8inc.com, where you can buy something, click on something, watch something, read something, or just sponsor a program.